You know, the wealthy have a way of operating when the eyes are not on them, or when they're in their element, or they have a gathering. But there are also another level to rich people that most already have conspiracies about, and that is more along the lines of the elites, as you would call them, like high society, super high society clubs. What exactly do they do, and what are their what do they participate in when your eyes are not on them? This video is about them talking about what exactly, and the truth is, about super secret high society clubs.
Some rich people just have so much time and money on their hands, they don't know what to do with it all. The Hellfire Club was made up of those sorts of people. In the 18th century, some of the richest men in Britain and Ireland decided to fill their nights with activities organized under the guise of a club whose name says it all, the Hellfire Club. There were a number of chapters of the club that sprang up throughout the 1700s, and there are a few crucial points that need to be made. They were definitely not part of an official sort of organization. They were incredibly secretive, and they were born from an upper class that had been enraptured by the Enlightenment philosophy.
Who else was the Enlightenment philosophy around? Name, what was that group? Oh, Illuminati. Go figure.
The Enlightenment philosophy. What does that mean? It means they were testing the boundaries of society and good taste, turning their back on what they had been taught about morals, and essentially seeing what they could get away with. Over the centuries, the legend of the Hellfire Club has become a pop culture staple, and their legacy has informed the ways cults and secret societies have been depicted in literature and on screen. But what's the truth? Here's what really went on behind the closed doors of the Hellfire Club.
This would be interesting. Let's see how many of the things that they do or did back then we've heard of them doing in modern day high society clubs.
The members of the Hellfire Club had a few things in common. They were rich, they had no regard for the morals of society, they could keep secrets, and they could get out of pretty much any trouble they happened to get into. That means the common folk were left to tell stories about what they thought went on behind those closed doors.
Now, we know this for a fact, right? That this is exactly what they do. They don't really pay the price for much. They do a lot of the things that us common folk, if we did it, we'd be in prison, right? They could evade things. They could, some of them, like Mr. Jenner, Bruce, could run people over, end their life, and not really pay any price for it. Money.
Hellfire clubs were commonly linked with tales of satanic rituals and demonic dealings. Simon Luttrell was the sheriff of Dublin City when he was in the Hellfire Club, and there were whispered rumors that he'd sold his soul to the devil. There's also a story that involves a card game with an unfortunate player who dropped a card. As he bent down to pick it up, he noticed that one of his fellow players had a cow's foot. He regained his composure, but after a few hands, he revealed what he'd seen. The hooked player disappeared, and the man who'd seen his true foot promptly died.
I'll give you more insight into some things here, my history. And I think I've told you all this before, but voodoo is big in the Caribbean. Voodoo is mad crazy down there. And we've had stories of people with exactly that type of look, foot like that, a clubbed foot or a hooked foot or a clove foot. They're all animalistic kind of body parts that would make bets with people, encourage them in doing gambling with their life. And if they lost, they would die, or they would just disappear. Or they would be either, if they won, they got certain benefits from it. So it's not unheard of for this kind of stuff to be taken, not even in high society. It was just with broke people too.
According to popular legend, Dublin's Hellfire Club always left one seat empty in case the devil decided to join them. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. That was the case with Irish Hellfire Club member Henry Barry, Lord Santry. According to legend, Barry employed a sedan chairman to carry him around, and when the servant was ill and bedridden one day, Barry forced him to drink a quart of brandy, then set the entire bed on fire. Another story says that Barry was attending a Hellfire Club meeting when he forced a man to drink so much brandy it filled his stomach and throat, then lit him on fire. He was never prosecuted for that, but he was arrested for events that happened during a gathering of the Hellfire Club in Palmerstown, Dublin.
So, let me get this right. They knew what he did. It was known, not hidden, didn't pay no price for it. Wow.
When someone laughed at Barry, legend says he drew his sword and stabbed a tavern employee. Barry's bribery worked for a while, but he was eventually found guilty for the murder. Barry only dodged execution because his wealthy landowning uncle threatened to cut off Dublin's drinking water, and Barry scored a royal pardon.
What? So that much hasn't changed. We know that happens today. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? We've known of people who have money, which is why money is such a vice for people. If I just have enough funds, I can get out of a lot of issues. I don't need to go to the courts and do all that stuff. I'll just bribe an official over here. In fact, the official might be able to be bribed long before they even find out about my crimes. In fact, they can even let my crimes be known and nothing will be done of it because I have these particular people under my finger. That much hasn't changed. So Hellfire is still going on.
Mixing fire and booze was also a particular pastime of Hellfire Club member Richard Chappelle Whaley. He had an unhealthy obsession with fire, and according to rumor, he eventually burned Hellfire Club's Montpelier Hill headquarters to the ground after dousing a servant in brandy and setting him on fire.
Well, that's one way to stop drinking. I guess this would be a great way to deter people from having alcohol. Burn everybody that drinks it.
Sounds like there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
It's difficult to separate legend from truth because the Hellfire Club most commonly met at the Eagle Tavern, not Montpelier Hill. But historians do seem to agree that club meetings were kicked off with a drink called Scalfing, which was essentially whiskey, butter, pepper, and sugar.
That sounds like it would hurt going down and out. I wouldn't do it because of the pepper. That's the line I draw right there. Pepper? Ain't no need for that. Come on, man.
Harold says one of the more popular drinking games they played was drinking, quote, while standing close enough to a roasting fire to melt the marrow in their bones. The last man standing was the winner. Couldn't they have just played Clue instead?
Or hear me out, spades. Go fish. There's so many other options. Instead, let's see which one of us can stand here without dying. Look, I remember watching movies back in the day, namely things like Robin Hood, where people would just stand against a wheel and wear an apple on their head and have people, shoot, snipe the apple off there. I've seen that before. I'm sorry, that wouldn't be me. I might trust you with a certain thing, but that would be I'll concede. You want me to stand in front of the fire? I'm good. You win. Take win. And get away with the prizes. Even if I lose money, I'm not putting my life on the line for you.
Flames on the side of my face.
Regardless of whether they were drinking to the devil, the Hellfire Club was definitely drinking to something. Chapter members in England recorded some of the names of their cocktails, like Gin and Sin and Strip Me Naked. They also referred to members as 3 or 4 bottled men based on how many bottles of port they could drink at a time. Simon Luttrell was one of the more notorious members of Ireland's Hellfire Club. Supposedly, Darky Kelly, the madam of a Dublin brothel, became pregnant with Luttrell's child and tried to blackmail him. He accused her of being a witch, and she was tried and executed. Straightforward enough, but there may have been a little more to it. Newspaper reports from the time suggest Luttrell, who was a member of the House of Commons and the Sheriff of Dublin at the time, may have had a different role.
My original question at the beginning of this video was, I wonder how many of the things taking place back in the day are carried forward to now. Let's take the most prolific person to begin. Mr. Who? Epstein. Let's take a look at how money kept him the first time he was accused of this and found that he did do it. What did money afford him? Money afforded him a nice, sweet, cush deal where he can still go to work, and it was called house arrest. And he could go back and forth, leave whenever he wants. So it's not even like it was arrest for any real reason. He just couldn't travel very far. In cases like this, now you come forward, I got blackmail. No, you don't really have blackmail on me. I have you over the barrel. I'll just have you executed. But your child, don't really care about the child. I didn't want the child anyway. I'll just kill both of y'all. Man alive.
Kelly's execution came in 1760, not 1746, as it was claimed, after she was put on trial for the murder of a local shoemaker named John Dowling. Authorities searched her property, found the bodies of 5 men, and she was found guilty. After unsuccessfully trying to get a stay of execution for a pregnancy she didn't have, she was strangled until she was nearly dead, then burned to death. According to researchers, Kelly's story was probably confused with another scandal involving Luttrell, one where his son was accused of sexually assaulting a teenage girl. During the Enlightenment, people started to question what they'd been taking on faith for a long time.
That too is also something that still happens with rich people. They have and when I want people to be clear about something, when I say rich people, I don't mean just your Joe Smo that's a millionaire and he made it by having a construction company and he's still working. That kind of, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the kind of people that drip money. Okay, the ones that walk around and all they wear is a $5 million watch and a $10 million necklace, and the clothes are worth nearly 500 million. All that. That's the kind of rich I'm talking about. Okay, but it seems as though they know how to get not just out of trouble, but bail their next of kin out. Their sons always or their daughters seem to engage in something really, really criminal just to get out. There was another guy like that. Had a last name to start with B. He had a coke problem, and he dealt with guns too, and he shouldn't have had them, and he ended up sleeping with his brother's wife and all that kind of. I forget his name. Y'all don't know who I think I'm talking about, right? I don't want to mention his name. Y'all know who I'm talking about, right? But he was a crackhead, and what happened to him? Pardoned. See what I mean?
The wealthy rakes of the Hellfire Club were highly skeptical of Christianity in particular, and according to one letter written by a member under the pseudonym Morlock, a lot of what they were doing was essentially thumbing their noses at organized religion. Morlock wrote of a club practice called the sacrifice of the maidens, but historians think it's not entirely what it seems. It was likely taking a woman's virginity, and they were doing it while pledging allegiance to old pagan gods.
I'm going to go on a limb, just me stepping out here, and say you're kind of oversimplifying what they were capable of. You just mentioned quite a few things prior to in your video about them lighting people on fire, them having a woman executed because she was lying about a baby. But you draw the line that they probably wouldn't be doing certain sacrifices of women. Oh, no, they were probably doing that for sure, for sure. It wouldn't be a doubt in my mind that that was taking place, not even remotely.
When Philip Wharton first started the Hellfire Club, it was officially dedicated to drinking, lewdness, and puerile acts of blasphemy. Members would dress as monks and characters from the Bible, and it seems as though the anti-religious stuff was what authorities really took issue with. Wharton's club was closed in 1721 due to blasphemy and profaneness. When Sir Francis Dashwood founded his drinking and debauchery club in the 1750s, he called it the Knights of Sir Francis of Wickham. Kellyanne Williams, who works on the West Wickham estate, says the Hellfire Club label came later, but it stuck. She told the BBC that beneath Dashwood's estate is a series of tunnels, the purpose of which are entirely unknown.
Not unknown. Not unknown. It seems to be a running theme. Hefner has it. Vatican has it. Multiple movie stars have it. It's been said that Puffy has it. It's been said that Jay-Z has it. Tunnels, I mean. I wouldn't be surprised if multiple politicians have them too. I wouldn't be surprised if certain government officials in their actual government buildings have tunnels as well for, let's just say, the carrying out of certain activities that may involve humans. I wouldn't put them past it at all, especially if you're not trying to do things above ground. Heck, they found a tunnel under a Jewish synagogue that they were trafficking people through. It's not far-fetched for rich people to have this stuff going on so that they don't have other people. They can bring things in that no one else would know about.
Inside those tunnels is the inner temple, an extra secret room at the bottom of a series of secret rooms that was so off limits that the highest ranking members could only access it by boat. There are some clues as to what went on there. Silverware and drinking vessels have survived, and Williams says wine and women were undoubtedly the most popular things in the caverns. She also says historians were close to having complete documentation of all Hellfire Club activities. Paul Whitehead acted as the club's steward and recorded everything that went on.
I wonder if he recorded any of the so-called sacrificial things that they did there. Or I wonder if he was held to an oath to not mention the worst part of what they were doing, just enough to make people believe that it was something that they had mysterious insight to keep the mystique of it going. You know, some people leak information that's one, partially scary, but two, really well, like, wow. So people would be more intrigued by it. I have a suspicion that that's what he was writing down, just the stuff that people would want to be interested in. But he couldn't document the real things that were going on in there. It was just assumed.
Unfortunately for history, he spent the 3 days prior to his death burning all club records.
There you go. There you go. You can't be letting nobody know what we do in official capacity. You can't have that. Imagine now if the info he had involved the crown. What if the info he had involved not just regular rich people, but governmental people in really high locations that they did not want knowing they were doing stuff with? I'd burn it too.
There is a strangely happy footnote to this all, though. Dashwood ordered the caves excavated as a way to provide jobs for locals who were suffering through a series of crop failures. Dashwood was in Italy when he developed his seething hatred of the Roman Catholic Church, and even before his knights assembled first in London's George and Vulture pub, he had a certain fondness for commissioning some of the era's finest artists to do insanely blasphemous portraits of him, including one where he ogles a statue of Venus. For his club, he acquired Medmenham Abbey and inscribed the motto Faceke Voldras, or do what thou wilt.
There it is, the Satanic code, do as thou wilt. The other one that they use is as above, so below kind of thing. That's the normal going. Again, whenever they tell you that they do it as a mock, it also has to be done as a worship to the opposite person. So for all intents and purposes, what it really is, this Hellfire is a satanic cult that worships Satan, that really amplifies their joy in the mocking of Christianity. That's essentially what it boils down to.
Over the door.
What is the password? Orgy.
Supposedly, Dashwood built a temple dedicated to Bacchus on his estate and became obsessed with the idea his estate encompassed an old pagan site. When he had his labyrinth of caves excavated, he made sure the ancient deities were included.
Oh! I want to go back to that picture real quick. I get that there's the horn of plenty kind of thing and the grapes and all that stuff, but it looks almost like the Starbucks fish lady, but upside down. I have to wonder if there is a connection there with the gods that they worship, and it all comes out. I'm curious.
Deities were included. According to the era's coffeehouse gossips, part of the rituals that went on there were so-called sacrifices to both Bacchus and Venus. The members of the Hellfire Club were all among the upper crust, lords and earls, military officers, members of parliament.
I was right. Okay, good.
As you might expect, politics and debauchery weren't always separate, and on at least one occasion, a prank gone wrong may have had drastic repercussions.
Never a prank, never gone wrong, always intentional. I've learned this much about politicians and people that say this happened accidentally. You remember the story about a certain operative, a person that was within the circle of the Clintons? The running theory is that he strung himself up in a tree, and he ended his life with a shotgun while he was up in the tree. Now, I'm not one of those people that's really super athletic. I used to be, not since injuries. I've long since left those ideas of grandeur behind. However, I don't think I've ever been so athletic that I was able to hang myself, and in the process of the hanging, be able to maneuver a shotgun to finish the job. That's some skill. So no, I don't think that you can say that it was just happenstance, accident. It's never accident. Usually it's prepped and staged like an accident.
John Wilkes was a poet and controversial politician who was ousted from Parliament because of charges of libel brought by John Montague, Lord Sandwich. Wilkes and Thomas Potter, the son of the Archbishop of Canterbury, had taken Alexander Pope's Essay on Man and written a parody called Essay on Woman. Wilkes had been in the process of printing 12 copies, likely for his fellow Hellfire Club members, when Sandwich brought charges against him. Apparently, Sandwich had hated Wilkes for a while, ever since Wilkes had decided it would be funny to dress a baboon as the devil and let it loose during one of the club's services in Dashwood's Medmenham Abbey.
I'm sorry, but that's, to me, I have a okay, call it a darker sense of humor, but I think that's funny. I think that is hilarious that you would do something like that. You have the money to do it too. I think it's funny. Hate me now. Call me what you want to call me in the comment section. But I think that's pretty stinking funny.
Sandwich, believing it was the devil coming to get his soul, fled as fast as he could and never forgave Wilkes for the humiliation.
I wouldn't either. I'd be mad. I'd be off my rocker mad. You did that to me, but maybe like years down the road, I might find it funny too.
After the libel trial, Wilkes was found guilty, fled to France, and was declared an outlaw.
Oh,
Of all the Hellfire Club's misdeeds, the authorities really had the biggest problem with the blasphemy.
You know, 300 years ago, you'd have been burned at the stake for saying something like that.
300 years ago, I wouldn't have said it.
In 1738, a painter named Peter Lenz found himself under investigation by the Committee for Religion. He was a self-confessed member of the Blasters, which was likely just another name of Dublin's Hellfire Club. The Blasters had become well known for publicly praying to the devil and disrupting church services. In reality, they no more believed in the devil than they believed in God. And
Yeah, no, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. You have to have not just a disdain for God to do it, but you have to have an affinity for the other guy. I don't care whether you feel like God doesn't exist. If you didn't think he existed, you wouldn't be wasting time mocking something that didn't exist. That makes you psychotic. That makes you crazy. That does not seem logical in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So no, we ain't doing that. They did indeed know who they were worshiping. It was intentional. And the idea that you think they can just say, "Oh, we don't believe in the devil," I'm calling bollocks on that one.
they just used blasphemy as a way to offend the establishment.
Hmm.
Even though there have been artifacts that seem to show diabolical imagery, that doesn't mean they actually worship the devil.
I remember Cat Williams saying that same kind of idea in it's odd that I had to use the same reference twice in a day, but when Cat, there was, I don't remember the name of the movie now, but he was behind bars and he got a visit from his girl and her sons, but one son didn't look like him at all, and one son was of the same race. And he asked, "Who's that white baby?" And the lady said, "This is yours." And he said, that one might be mine, but just because you name him Darren don't mean he belonged to Darren. It's the same thing here. I mean, we fall, but this don't mean I don't, just because we worship the man don't mean or act like it mean we actually. Nah, you do. No, you do. It's like just because I worship the devil don't mean I worship the devil. That's just different. It's you just assuming things at this point, and you can't be assuming things this badly of me because I'm not that kind of person. Bro, it's kind of obvious. You don't just pick up the mantle of worshiping Satan and not just the act of doing that. Technically, is worshiping him. You're putting yourself in a kind of a lurch, and you may not know it, but he gonna make it known to you eventually.
Historians think any rites and rituals were done in part to heighten the club's mysterious image, and in part because they thought it was just pretty hilarious. No one else did, and Lenz was ultimately arrested for his blasphemous and disruptive actions. While there were definitely some Hellfire Club members who were more into murder than mayhem, there's one antidote that speaks volumes to the mentality of the men in the club. High above Francis Dashwood's estate is a gold sphere perched on top of the Church of St. Lawrence. There's just enough room inside for a few people to look out not only over the countryside, but over Dashwood's gardens, which have been planted in the shape of a curvaceous and very naked woman.
Now, mind you, this is supposedly religious. Okay.
Not only did the garden feature some carefully placed pink rose bushes and triangles of forest, but there were also strategically placed fountains that could be turned on with a signal from Dashwood.
There you go. Now, okay, and this is not in defense of anybody, but a lot of the so-called clergy back in the day, which is, I should say, it's still happening now, but it's a little bit more masked. A majority of them did indeed do the imbibing of alcoholic beverages after masses and after services, and they would meet and they would have certain handmaids meet them in certain locations to, do stuff. And the majority of the people that had the money and the clergy to go with it, they would do stuff exactly like that. Fountains were made, sculptures were made, and all of them seem to suggest certain kinds of activities within. You've probably seen them. Some cherubims that would be, urinating or something, or you'd have these voluptuous females holding bowls of water and it become a fountain feature. But the water and the shoulders, the dress slipped off the shoulder enough, or maybe even fully exposed stuff. And they always seem to be on the premises of churches. And you wonder why, or even in the gardens of churches, or even cemeteries. Because they were doing this stuff to do it in your face, that we are still doing this stuff in the background. We're just doing it under the coverage of, we know God.
Dashwood was reportedly a fan of taking members of the clergy up into the sphere to see his massive lady garden. And according to Sir Edward, the modern Dashwood descendant in charge of the estate, a lot of what actually went on at the Hellfire Club was all in good fun. He says, Sir Francis wasn't crazy. He was just a tremendous character, and he had bloody good fun. They all dressed up and drank a hell of a lot.
But you're man of the cloth. For you to be drinking a hell of a lot. Anyway,
check out one of our newest videos right here.
I'm baffled, but I'm not. I'm also not very surprised to hear that this particular group did the Satan idea worship, and it spilled over into clergymen, because a lot of them eventually, probably more than likely, left that arena, went into the clergy idea of, I'm going to become a man of God now. But they never really left it, but they wanted an in to have it more secretive, more hidden, more protected, because majority of the government were most of them leaned towards the religious before now. And they would find some sort of protection away from just being, hey, I'm a rich guy, I'm a lech, and I have these things going for me. But you don't look at a priest that way, especially one that's still bringing all of his bad habits, with him to that location. If any of this intrigues you, I'd love to have the conversation. Which one of you believes that this is still a massive problem, not just in politics, but also in the cloth? How many of these high society people do the kinds of things that he's talking about, and why do they all seem to participate with demonic worship and increase their wealth because of the worship of the devil? I'd like to hear your viewpoints on this one, because I have a suspicion that it happens way more often than we believe, and to more people, and even to the ones that say they know God.
Training athletes, building leaders, changing communities. At Mentors for Life, sponsored by the Bully Me Bad Project, we provide free professional sports training and mentorship to youth with passion, drive, and the desire to grow. We connect them with top-tier coaching and leadership tools that unlock their full potential. Our athletes train with elite professionals like Coach Cedric Moody of CM3, who's worked with NBA players such as Jaden Ivey and Blake Wesley, and the dynamic team of Tevin Lake and Bobo from T2 Sports Performance. Together, they've trained standout athletes including Notre Dame football stars, NFL offensive lineman Danny Piner, and Kyron Williams. In a school or neighborhood of 1,000 youth, 5 redirected lives can mean 5 future leaders, 5 families spared heartbreak, and 5 powerful stories of hope. And this is backed by research from the Money Smart Athlete Foundation, which shows that athletes have a powerful influence on youth behavior, confidence, and long-term success. We don't just build athletes, we build mentors. High school students who complete our program will become certified Mentors for Life members and will be paid to speak, lead, and coach the next generation. To support Mentors for Life, all you have to do is click here if you're on a mobile device, or click here if you're on a computer to donate or learn more. Or you can reach us directly at mentorsforlife574@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mentors for Life. Donate today and help save our youth.